Welcome back to another episode of Taking Inventory. This week, we're joined by Steve Gatena, the CEO and founder of Pray.com, which, if you haven't heard of it, is an incredible story. We'll hear Steve tell it from start to finish and what they're doing in the space. But Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Daniel, the world's second greatest moderator.
Nicest thing that I guess has ever said to me. So thank you. Why don't we start off just by hearing about your journey building up to Pray.com. You've in a lot of businesses and you've started a lot of businesses before you got to Pray.com. So walk us through that.
Yeah, I kind of consider myself a serial entrepreneur at this point. My brief background was I'm from Southern California. I was born to a single Jewish mom on welfare. So my mom is Jewish. My dad is Catholic. And I pretty much grew up like most Southern California kids, not religious, wasn't into going to church or anything like that. I was super into sports. So grew up in Westlake Village, played sports growing up, played football. And out of high school, I decided I want to go to the United States Air Force Academy. So I actually went to the Air Force Academy, majored in computer science there. And I got hurt pretty bad my first year. I dislocated my shoulders, collapsed my lung, broke my hand, got pneumonia, and ended up with an honorable discharge out of the Air Force Academy. And that really changed my life. I thought I was going to, be doing a career in the Air Force, working with computers. Now, all of a sudden, I was, a civilian going to regular school, but fortunately had the opportunity to finish up at the University of Southern California. I played football there and I got to win a Rose Bowl with Coach Pete Carroll. So that was a dream come true for any kid from SoCal. And out of college, I actually started my first company. My company was a homework assignment at Marshall School of Business. I was taking an entrepreneurship class and my teacher said, think of a business that couldn't exist 5 years ago that would boom 5 years from today. And I said, there should be a company that makes professional YouTube videos. My teacher said, what's YouTube? So this was back in 2008. YouTube was pretty new. And I started that as my first business. Had no idea what I was doing and spent my 20s building out all the online video channels, the YouTube channels for Fortune 500 companies, brands like Marriott, Coldwell Banker, Los Angeles Dodgers, Herbalife, Reebok. And it was a blast. Sold that company in 2015. And that was a life-changing deal for me. Became the CEO of the world's largest aerial production company. So we filmed all the major motion pictures and TV shows from helicopters mostly. So CSI, Law and Order, Transformers, Mission Impossible. We did all the big productions. We also did aerial surveillance. So we did confidential surveillance missions for FBI, DEA, foreign governments, municipalities, stuff like that. So spy helicopters. And we did air medical transport. So patients and organs, hospital to hospital. And that was rad. I'm 29. I'm CEO of the largest aerial production company in the world. We're making movies, saving lives, and catching bad guys. And I was living the dream. And on September 11th, 2015, my business partner died in a plane crash outside Medellin, Colombia, just after we finished the job. And after that happened, I started getting really into faith-based content, spiritual content, things like Tony Robbins, things like Oprah. And that journey exposed me to content from pastors. And I started listening to a bunch of these podcasts from pastors. And, I didn't really grow up religious. So this was like very new for me. It was something I really loved. It was helping me a lot. And that's really where the seed of the idea Pray.com started. After my partner died, we had to sell off a bunch of divisions of the business, and I left as the CEO. And I decided that I was going to spend the rest of my life building Pray.com as the digital destination for faith. I felt like we had a digital destination for sports content, ESPN. Why don't we have a digital destination for faith content? That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I had these skills. I was a media entrepreneur. I really just felt like it was something that needed to exist in the world. And that's how I got going on Pray.com.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I guess maybe just for listeners who, if they haven't, played around with the app and, like, can you kind of explain just like kind of like the breadth of like what you guys offer, like from the podcasts to the live streams, and maybe just like, talk about some of the people who are involved. I know there's, there's pretty wild amount of big names that have been a part of it. So I think that'd be helpful just to kind of wrap people's head around. And then also you can just share a little bit about that you guys have this B2B business. I don't know if B2B is the right way to explain it, but more SaaS oriented business. I think both those would be interesting to people to know.
Yeah. I mean, so if we go back to like my personal experience, right? My partner died on a Friday at 4:53 p.m. And when that happened, I don't know if you all have ever been through a tragedy like that, or if you've ever gotten that phone call, right? Where the person on the other end, delivers that bad news. But where I was at after getting that phone call was I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know where to go, right? I felt very alone. I felt very isolated. And also I had to keep doing my job, right? So like I couldn't just shut down. And so I would say like in this moment of hopelessness, right? And in this moment of not knowing just kind of what next steps to take, it was painful. And these podcasts that I ended up coming across, they really helped me get through that. They helped me through this season of my life. And they helped me grow my faith. And through that, it gave me this content, right? Gave me something to talk about with other people, which then started to build a community around myself. And so at Pray.com, our mission is to grow faith and cultivate community. And for me, as somebody that didn't go to church, I didn't all of a sudden want to start going to church. And so I would say my problem statement, James, the problem statement we build around was, I don't want to go to church. I want to feel like I went to church. And so before I jump into like features and how people use the app, I just wanted to like frame that up for you so that you can understand, and like anybody who's listening to this can understand where I was coming from and what the problem was that I was trying to solve at the time that we started this. It was, I don't want to go to church. I want to feel like I went to church. And so today, right, people download Pray.com for a lot of different reasons, but getting that feeling like they went to church, getting that feeling like they could connect with God, getting that ability to grow their faith, that kind of encapsulates like the primary reason. And then there's sub reasons within that. So if you download the app today, the first thing that you'll see is a daily prayer. Well, Pray.com, it's the Pray app, right? We make prayer a priority. So the first thing that happens is you open the app and it literally opens to a daily prayer for you to do. That's the primary thing people do. If you're Christian, you might call it a daily devotional, right? But you open the app to a daily prayer. The next most popular thing people use our app for is to learn the Bible. All Judeo-Christian faiths are based on the Bible. Most people have never read the Bible, even though it's the most popular book ever created in the history of the world, right? And so then after people start with a daily prayer, they go into some kind of content curriculum around learning the Bible. The third thing people use the app for is to help them fall asleep. They want to find a pocket of peace before they go to sleep. And so we have a bunch of different sleep content. So When we go out to create our daily prayers, we'll partner with celebrities. We'll partner with Drew Brees, or we'll go find incredible musicians like Chris Tomlin to help us create our daily prayers. When we build content curriculum around the Bible, like our Bible in a Year podcast, we'll go partner with big pastors like Pastor Graham, Pastor Jack Graham out of Dallas, Texas. And we'll build an entire series around learning the Bible so that you can hear the Bible come to life. When we go to build our sleep content, we'll partner with pastors that have incredible voices like Bishop T.D. Jakes. And he's got this like deep timbre voice, right? He'll help you fall asleep. So when we hit these kind of 3 buckets, daily prayer, learning the Bible, and falling asleep, we'll go out and we'll partner with these incredible teachers and pastors or these incredible celebrities that have awesome voices or they're super inspiring. Separately, we'll do events. So we do the National Day of Prayer. When we do something like the National Day of Prayer, we'll have the President of the United States come on. We'll have, A-list celebrities like Terry Crews come on. We'll have all these awesome people that want to promote the power of prayer throughout the United States come on. We also do a variety of other events, where we'll go do like in-person volunteer activities where we'll partner with a church and do a food drive or do a fundraiser to help stop human trafficking, right? So we get this really cool blend because we live at the intersection of margin and mission, because we're at the intersection of profit and purpose, where we get to go out and we get to partner with all these incredible people. And I'd be remiss if I left off all the awesome investors. We are a company, right? We're not a nonprofit. So we're a for-profit company. We have a bunch of tier 1 venture capitalists, people like Greylock, people like Founders Fund, Sequoia Scouts, Science, and we have incredible angel investors, people like yourself, right? So people that really believed in the vision. They saw that in this category that was often overlooked and neglected, it might be possible to build something special that could lead the future of faith.
As you talk about it, I think we've seen over the last decade or so, people really looking, as you've described, for community, for something in their life that is more calming, more settling, something that helps them not feel as isolated. Especially COVID, I think accelerated that, and would love to hear how you guys navigated that, the business, but also just the broader trend of people looking to build that community and not feel so isolated, but also this kind of decreasing trend of Americans having an official religious affiliation or faith affiliation, and how you guys navigate that between people not identifying, but still looking for what you guys are providing.
Yeah, it's, if you look at the graph of church attendance in America over the last 50 years, what you'll see is that it's just plummeting, right? The current graph probably shows that 40% of Americans would identify as going to church at least once a year. And if people do go to church, or if they say they go to church, usually it's CEO, Christmas and Easter only. So that's like the I go to church, check the box. And it's really a familial thing, right? It's a cultural thing. You see this a lot in the Catholic community. People will say I'm Catholic, right? What they mean is they're culturally Catholic. So definitely church attendance in the United States is on the decline. On the flip side, Daniel, if you look at content consumption around faith, it's skyrocketing. Religious podcasts are the number 1 category of podcasts in terms of content creators making episodes. If you back out all the music podcasts, they probably fall in like the top 5. So it's a massive booming category, right? And what we're seeing is a shift in behavior. And that shift in behavior mirrors, anything like movie theaters, right? People aren't going to the movie theaters as much, but they're watching more movies than ever. And the way that I think about pray.com is we're building for the next 20 years of ministry, not the last 20 years of ministry. And as we build, I actually don't want to be in the business of changing behaviors. I want to be in the business of changing mindsets. So we build for the people that are consuming digitally, that are consuming on their phone or in their car on the way to work, or they want to listen to something before they go to bed that's relaxing, or they want to have it play on their Alexa, or they want to have it wherever they want to have it.
And, so like for me, I'm Jewish. They're not like, I'm like kind of a typical Jewish kid from the Midwest, like pretty like secular. But do you think like for you guys, is it right now, is it primarily, Christian oriented content? And then if so, do you think you'd branch out to like all religions and like it's a platform for that? Or do you think that like just given Christianity is such a big market and just and is your faith, do you think that's where you stay? Like how do you kind of think about that over time?
And so for me, I have this like mixed background, right? This Catholic, Jewish, and I consider myself a Christian. And when we launched, I was like, dude, pray is for anybody that wants to pray. I would never turn away anybody that wants to pray, period. And so when we launched the first version of our product, which was really this social network foundation, it was kind of like, think of it as like Nextdoor for church or Facebook groups for church. When we launched the largest synagogue, the largest mosque, the largest temple, the largest church. We went to the Vatican and launched, right? So we embraced being able to be an interfaith platform where it was like, hey, anybody that wants to pray, and I'm going to proactively, even though I don't know anything about Islam, come to this mosque and launch the mosque and invite everybody to be able to use Pray. Because Pray is supposed to be the digital destination for faith. And then as we evolved the product, we went from social network, right, which was like pure utility, to having this content catalog, what I would call the digital church bookstore. And we launched this layer, almost like an Audible for church on top of our social network. And that was our business model because we are a business, right? Profit and purpose. So our first business model was this subscription content. And when we did that, we had the focus. And so I chose to focus on what I personally know, which is US English Christian. So all of our content was Bible-based content, right? Specifically focused on the US English Christian market. And today we're expanding into other languages, but really we're still in that US English Christian lane. And to your point, it's a massive market. It's also hyper fragmented. And I'm learning things every year. Like there's more Christians in Africa than people in the US. And there's more Christians in Asia than people in the US. And there's more Christians in Latin America than people in the US. And so when you were telling me about your journey at Snap, you kind of talked about what I would summarize, my words, not yours. These apps are kind of like countries. And there's a population within these apps. And there's also kind of like a GDP of your country. And that's how you can kind of understand what's the value of your country. And when you gave me that little nugget, that piece of wisdom, I was like, well, what country is Pray.com like? Is it Switzerland? Is it Brazil? Like, I'm not really sure. And as I started going down that path, after you told me that comment, we started putting our tentacles out there and we started looking in other markets to try to understand. And since then, we launched with a few telcos. We did some telco partnerships in Africa. We got over 1 million subscribers in Africa. We're launching with telcos in Mexico. Same thing's going to happen. And so I was like, wow, the country of Pray.com, it doesn't necessarily look like some Jewish kid from the Midwest. And it doesn't necessarily look like some Christian kid from SoCal. It's very different. And to be honest, we're still learning what does that country look like, because as we enter these new markets, we're seeing an excitement for the product that is like unprecedented. It always exceeds something that we did before. So it's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
In your app, I mean, it is free for people to download and start to engage with the content. You launched then as kind of a consumer subscription for individuals, for families, for businesses. But now that you've had, I mean, 1 million downloads immediately in Africa and obviously many, many more globally, do you start to look at bringing ads in like other kind of app developers and have this hybrid model of subscription, ads, freemium?
Yeah. And yes, the answer is yes. And when we first started, I was like, we'll probably never do ads. I just kind of figured we'd never do ads. Audible does like 3 billion in revenue a year, and they do like 2.5 billion in EBITDA. And I was like, I don't know very many people that have an app that, is that big. And that sounds like a pretty good business to me. And a little bit of that was naivete, right? Like I didn't understand, how do you acquire customers? What's the cost involved with acquiring customers? And if you're owned by Amazon, maybe you get all that search traffic on Amazon for books for free. So your CAC is 0. And you also have the biggest digital bookstore in the world feeding you installs, right? So, I hadn't completed the loop there at that time, but I really, from a psychological perspective, Daniel, I didn't really want ads because from my personal experience, I was starting from audio. And one thing that I'd always kind of known from audio that I felt was, when it comes to images, one woman's face is one woman's face to 1,000 different men, right? So if I see a picture of a woman and you see a picture of a woman, we're seeing the same woman, right? But one woman's voice is 1,000 different women's voices to 1,000 different men. If I'd hear someone's voice and you hear that same voice, we don't know what that person looks like. We're imagining who that person is. And so I always knew that there was a special power in audio to activate your imagination, your kind of creative mind. And it took me until we were doing clinical studies, clinical trials, clinical research, which we're doing with Pray.com, and working with neuroscientists to really understand what was happening in the brain. And what's happening is, in your brain, there are these brain waves, and the frequency of brain waves that really get activated in that moment are called theta, right? That's like what a neuroscientist would say. And really, when you're in that state, right, you're primed for meditation, creativity, being super open. And I felt like audio ads were like totally jarring. I was like, dude, I don't want to get like a Nike shoe ad when I'm, in the middle of like expressing gratitude, connecting with God, like, and then all of a sudden, boom, like the Whole Foods ad drops in. Like, that's weird. Like, that doesn't even make sense. So I was very anti ads, and like, even still, I'm always very hesitant to introduce ads. It wasn't until we launched a podcast off platform. We launched a podcast about a year ago called Bible in a Year. Today, we've got over 70 million podcast downloads. So we're crushing it. We're like a top 20 podcast studio in the world. And when we launched the podcast, we threw ads in the podcast and we got no complaints. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe there are some types of audio content where it's cool to put ads in, right? It's not like my devotional, like prayer moment, right? But maybe it's in between Bible stories, and maybe there are different production formats where we can build these shows. And so we started tuning and iterating on that. And that's where we're at today. I can't tell you that we have like a perfect format for ads. I can't tell you that 100% of our customers love the ads. But what I can tell you is that we have a working format for ads, and a majority of the customers are not bothered by those ads.
Yeah. And you also have, I mean, in this sort of like world that is becoming much more privacy, you know, first, and it's just harder to like know an audience. You're talking about like kind of the GDP of prey, like, you know, you guys do have, you know, a really, really interesting, like, as we would describe it, like graph, right? Like to understand, like, just how people spend their time and what they value. And obviously not doing it in like a creepy way, but like, it has like the foundations of like what a lot of really big ad businesses start to look like. And so like, have you found that, that your, community members, users, like in general are like, okay with that sort of trade? Again, I know you guys obviously do it in a very privacy safe way, but, are you guys allowed to explore like targeting? Are you allowed to kind of explore ways of sort of segmenting the user base, or do you think there's kind of a layer you can't go like kind of below?
I don't know the answer to that. I really don't know the answer. And really, James, I think it's this simple. Like, if we never try anything, then we never learn anything. So if we never take risks, then we're just going to stay where we are. And if we're staying where we are, then we're going to just die slowly, right? It's just entropy. And so, what I've seen is through the experiments that we've done, starting with podcasts, people love getting incredible free content. They love it. Like if I was like, dude, I'm going to give you can go watch all the best movies in the world with ad breaks, but it's going to be for free. You probably would take it. Like 8 out of 10 people would be like, okay, I'll take it. Like free Netflix for life, but there's some ads in it. And so what I've learned is people love getting things that are awesome, right? Especially if they're free. And I think that there's a way to do ads incredibly well where they're not off-putting. And because we started Prey with a social network, we have a massive customer data platform. So we have a customer data platform with almost 100 million profiles in it. So we know a lot about our customers. We know what they want. We know what they like. And in my opinion, that lends the opportunity to partner with the types of brands that fit our audience, with the types of quality products that our customers want to buy. Because the thing about Christians is they're also people, right? They also go to the store. They also buy Coca-Cola or Gatorade, right? And when you have a strong set of core values and beliefs, you tend to align with others also have those core values and beliefs. So like, I wouldn't be upset about a brand that wants to support me, that wants to support what I believe in, and that creates an incredible product. Now, how we create those ads, I think it matters. Like,
Yeah.
and we kind of talked about that earlier.
Yeah. Just like as like an ad tech guy, it's just like, it's such a unique data set and just such a unique community that you have. And then we saw this again and again at Snap. And I've talked to friends about this at Instagram. People really do enjoy targeted, relevant ads. Like there is like people like everyone, like is obviously negative about ads in some ways, but like in terms of its ability to subsidize costs and change unit economics of like businesses like this and help deliver quality content, like they get a really bad rap. So I feel like you guys, to your point, like, could make it so relevant. And I can give a little like kind of personal anecdote. Is just like my wife's family is from Oklahoma. They're users of your app. And, I can, like, I've asked them like, just in general, just about like, would you want more targeted ads based on the fact that you're a user of this? I talked to them before I was talking to your team a couple weeks ago, just to get their take. And they're like, absolutely. Like, I want more brands that align with how I think. And so, yeah, it strikes me as just like such an interesting thing. And especially now that like every business has an ad network, like this one strikes me as just like such an interesting thing. So it's very cool to see what you guys have done and the scale of it as
Yeah.
well.
And I think in general, like nobody wants to be sold. Everyone wants to be served. And so how can you present your brand or your product or service in a way where you're doing it in service of others? And we just happen to have like this unique multi-billion-dollar opportunity to partner with some of the world's biggest brands to serve people of faith. And again, like, I don't think that that's just some plug and play, like dynamic ad format, right? That might be a unique partnership around native content that we create, where the themes around the content that is built elegantly tie into the brand's core values. It might be that we do a concert series, right? That we go do a Christian music concert series, and the brands that are part of our concert series align with the core values of our audience, right? So there's a lot of ways for us to partner with these big brands. I just think that it's in a very graceful and customized way that helps our audience feel served and loved by these big brands that want to have a relationship with them.
As you were describing the kind of the new evolution of the business beyond just consumer subscription, now including ads, um, it reminds me a lot of mobile apps and mobile gaming. So there was a year I didn't work with James, a company called Algolift. We worked a lot with mobile gaming companies to help predict lifetime value, churn, just a lot of sophisticated modeling to help those businesses understand customer acquisition cost and how to convert users. And so introducing an ads business for you guys, I imagine introduces a whole new level of complexity where it's no longer binary of somebody converted to a subscription or not, but what is the likelihood of somebody converting to a subscription or not? What is the likelihood of them, going from just free content to content that is monetized through ads? And if somebody is an ads only user, you know, how much are you actually monetizing them through ads? And can you talk a little bit about how you and your team are starting to think about um, how you kind of organize your business to be able to manage that next level?
Yeah. I mean, Daniel, you nailed it. Complexity, right? Um, when we went from a single revenue stream to more than one revenue stream, I thought it was going to be no big deal. I was like, oh, it's, you're just making money another way. Um, it's really simple, right? Revenue minus expenses equals profit. So just count the dollars. And what I didn't realize was essentially all of the metrics around consumer subscription software, right, that I was using to run the business. Some of the basic terms like CAC, customer acquisition costs, LTV, LTV to CAC, payback period, right? The concepts were still relevant, but those metrics were no longer how you run the business. And I started reading through like quarterly reports of Snap and Facebook, and I'm like, oh, everything's like ARPU and MAUs, and this is different. Like, I'm not sure that we have these dashboards and analytics set up. And so over the last year, we've really been retooling internally. And it was wild. I was just looking at a board report yesterday, and this is like material, non-public information. So I probably shouldn't be saying it live on a podcast, but well, I'll scrub it up so it'll be playable. But when I was looking at the ARPU graphs and comparing them to 18 months ago, right? And when I'm looking at like the subscription business, I'm like, oh, we were in this, let's call it $1.70 to $1.90 quarterly ARPU range. And when I'm looking at them today, this last quarter was the first quarter that we broke $4. And so I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Like, this is real. This is very different. And this is exciting. And then also still like, the business is so sophisticated. You've been at Snap. You guys have like a couple thousand employees. Um, I don't even know what Facebook's at now, probably 20,000 or something. And you've got these armies of data scientists and PhDs and math and all these people, right? Just to help you kind of measure what's going on. We're still a startup, dude. We're 50 people. We run profitably. Like we're going to land at like probably 25 million this year. So it's duct tape and chewing gum still. And it's a lot more sophisticated. You got to be able to walk and chew gum now. So that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting too because like, I guess for your business, and again, we've talked about there's a bunch of different components of it, but do you also have the complexity of like having to manage like the rev share with your content creators as kind of the reason I asked that question is, well, we look at like Spotify's, for example, earnings and like, they have like a fundamentally different margin profile on like their ad revenue than someone like us. Just like a nature of how they have to rev share out. And obviously like Netflix has their content creation costs. And like, given that you guys are really like half SaaS business, half media company, is that like another part that you have to manage and think about and kind of just like a whole other layer of complexity that a listener probably doesn't think about?
I don't have to manage the rev share because we don't have a rev share. I do have to think about it. And so right now, all of the content that has ads in it, it's owned and operated by us. So these are shows that we own, think of like Netflix originals, right? So we've got our own Prey originals, and that's where we're putting ads in at the moment. And that's because of kind of some of the things we already talked about, right? We're trying to figure out ad formats, what's the right way to integrate an advertiser. It's not dropping a Nike ad right in the middle of the sermon. And so as we go into the next 20 years of ministry, we're thinking about how do we empower these creators to create ad supported content? And they're interested, right? But it's not like an overwhelming fervor for them because that's not how they run their nonprofits. Remember, they're nonprofits. So their goal is to reach as many people as possible. It's not to make as much money as possible, right? And they're there to evangelize and to disciple people as they go along this faith journey. And so what is the answer for how we can equip them with more resources, i.e. revenue, right? Via ads in a way that doesn't detract from their mission. So we're going to run ads in their content. How do we do that in a way that it's not disruptive to the mission of evangelizing and discipling people around the world? And I don't have the exact answer for that. And we're working on that.
Getting your message, their message out to more and more people. And because you guys do have your owned content, and I'm thinking about it, as you said, like a Netflix or like a more traditional kind of media company that has owned content as opposed to content that they partner to produce. Will we see, Pray.com content start to get distributed on other platforms? Like you said, a Netflix, you do have your original, you said on Spotify, on Roku. There are so many platforms where people consume content now of all types. What's your plan and thought process around starting to license or distribute outside of your own walls?
It's not something that we're focused on at the moment. It's also not something that we're against. So, our core focus right now is loving on leaders, right? And these are our faith leaders, building them all of the tools that they need to reach, engage, and monetize their audience, right? And they might not say reach, engage, and monetize. They would say evangelize, disciple, and impact. So making sure that we can continue to build our platform as the digital destination for faith in a way that loves on those leaders, that supports those leaders, that equips those leaders. That's our primary focus. Now, separately, the way that I viewed launching our first podcast initially was content marketing. I was like, oh, we'll just like launch a podcast. People hear about the app on Spotify or on iHeart, and then they'll just download pray.com. It's going to lend down our CAC on our subscription business. I just didn't realize how much revenue was possible through the ad model, right? And then it was like, okay, we did one podcast and it became like the number one podcast on Spotify for like religious podcasts, right? Can we do another podcast? Then we launched this other podcast, Sleep Psalms with Bishop TV Jakes, and it like crushed the charts. And it was like the number one fastest growing religious podcast and like a top 3 or a top 4 mental health podcast. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. There's like a real business here. But is that business us making originals that we monetize? Or is that business broader and it's an ad supported business? And that's really the moment in time that we're at with Pray. And so we're looking to understand what are the ad supported formats and methods that we can introduce to our customers that are not invasive, that do not take away from their faith experience. And we're continuing to iterate on that. Now, if I was on the other side of this question, Daniel, if I was at Netflix, or if I was at Amazon Prime Video, or if I was, any one of these streaming platforms, I know there's like 30 other platforms probably soon to be consolidated. But if I was over in one of these companies, one way that I might look at the world is subscription is our primary revenue driver. And there are different markets around the world where we can get subscribers. Our primary market, the United States, is highly saturated, right? We're probably not going to juice more Netflix subscribers out of the United States. So we have to go to the rest of the world. And if you go to the rest of the world, you have to have content that they're excited to consume. Remember when I told you that there's more Christians in Africa than people in the US? And there's more Christians in Latin America than people in the US? And there's more Christians in Asia than people in the US? Well, if you were Amazon Prime Video and you were super excited about expanding into Latin America and you needed to find a way to get billions of people with mobile phones to download your Amazon Prime Video in Africa. And if you wanted to get people that could either have their credit card on file with you or their telco account on file with you in Asia, then faith content would be an incredible beachhead into those markets. It's super inspiring and uplifting. It's already baked into the culture of these markets, right? It's incredibly positive. It's just a really cool thing to be a part of. And we're the first company ever in this space to not only come out and like raise venture capital and launch an app, not only come out and sell subscriptions to faith content. Like when we were going to do subscriptions, actually, Daniel, people were like, you can't sell subscriptions to faith content. Sermons are already free. Why would people buy a subscription to pray.com if they could get their sermon for free on podcasts or on YouTube? That makes no sense, right? Then we were the first faith company to ever do these partnerships with these telcos like Vodacom and launched in South Africa, right? So we continue to try these things where we're learning and where we're having these awesome breakthroughs. One of those things that we would be willing to try would be like, how about we take all of our most popular podcasts and light up a slate of Netflix originals or Amazon originals? Like we would be down for that. And it probably would work very, very well for an Amazon or for Netflix. Like people would love it.
Well, hopefully somebody from one of those companies is listening. But no, Steve, just hearing your journey and how you've built Pray is super inspiring. And I do think, a day and age and James and I are part of it, but there's a lot of companies being started and entrepreneurs out there. But I think you're you're in the minority where your company has a true mission. And I think you're delivering on that mission, right? Every company has a mission for the world, but I think yours is one that is um, very inspiring and one that I think brings a lot of positivity in the world. So I guess thank you for that. But before we let you go, where can people learn more about you? Obviously, we'll post to pray.com to make sure everyone has that link. But anything else you want to plug? I'll give you your time.
Yeah. Something I've been really passionate about lately is a nonprofit that I volunteer for called Beyond The Brotherhood.org. And one of my great friends, Jimmy May, started this nonprofit with another great friend of mine named Brian Tucker. And if you want to learn about Jimmy May, you could go listen to him on episode 405 of the Jocko podcast, Jocko Willing's podcast. But Beyond the Brotherhood, what they do is they help tier 1 special forces guys. They help Navy SEALs transition into the civilian world. And these are guys that have served our country. Some of them are missing certain skill sets that they might need to transition into elite sectors of the civilian world, right? They've kind of achieved an elite status in their own right, in their role. And now all of a sudden, they got to figure out, how do they get jobs? What's going on with tech, right? How do they build a network? And when you're a Navy SEAL and you're in the military for that long, you don't really get to go out and network, right? You don't get to talk about what you do. And so Beyond the Brotherhood really helps them with their career transition. It's something that's really important to me. If you guys want to get involved, or if you know anyone that wants to get involved, let me know and go check out their website. You can make a donation. They have epic events. Like, we did this event called the Triple S Challenge, where it was shoot, shift, and save. So they teach you how to go out and shoot guns in, let's call it a combat style situation. They teach you how to drive Humvees at night with night vision goggles on. And they teach you how to do first aid and save someone or rescue someone if there's a catastrophic injury. So it's not just like donate to a nonprofit. They have epic events, and it's pretty fun.
That is about as worthy of a cause as I could imagine. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure there's a bunch of people hopefully listening that could check it out. And then there's some friends already that I know are hiring that that I think would be really interested in trying to kind of get to that type of person, that type of background. So thanks for sharing that, man. And thank you for sharing the story of what you built. And I would say just like one thing too, just like one thing that I've always just found so impressive about you is that, like, obviously, it's relatively speaking, a tough space because like no one's really done it before, but like, regardless of it being Christian content, you're building an amazing business. And like this, your kind of grasp of like the numbers and the complexity of it, I think is extremely, just as like a founder, as an entrepreneur, is extremely kind of motivating and like kind of makes me want to be better. So thank you for being so like honest about the business and think about it. It's very cool to hear all the components of it.
Thanks, James. I appreciate you saying that. And I really do have a great team. Like, I know people like say that as like a plug line and they're like, oh, my team, and most of the time they don't mean it. Like, truly, my team is incredible. I have 3 co-founders. Mike Lynn, he's our CFO. So he knows the numbers inside and out way better than me. Ryan Beck, our CTO. And we would definitely have no product if it wasn't for him. Matt Potter, he's our biz dev guy. He's really like running out there. He knows like all the mega church pastors, and he's probably spoken at over 1,000 churches. So if you want to know about do things that don't scale, like, go talk to Matt Potter. Brian Chesky might have taken like 3 photos at like 2 Airbnbs. Matt Potter has actually gone door to door to 1,000 churches. So, yeah, we have a great team, and the rest of the team at Pray is awesome. So it's a teamwork makes the dream work.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for sharing all this today. Really happy to have you on.
Thank you, guys.